What's opening? What's closing? Today's episode is our monthly check-in on the dining and drink scene in Detroit. Because let's be honest, I watch this stuff regularly and even my head spins with all of the updates. To sort this all out, our man about town, Devon O'Reilly, joins me and Sven Gustafson at the Fisher Building for your Daily Detroit on Monday, September 30th, 2019. We'll get right to that after word from today's show sponsor, Lawrence Technological University. Traditional four-year students love Lawrence Technological University's thriving campus life, but LTU has always met non-traditional students' needs too. Lawrence Tech offers more than 100 degree and certificate programs that can get adult students started or back on track, and most classes are conveniently offered evenings at LTU's beautiful Southfield campus or online. So you can balance your social, family, and work life even while you power up your career. Find out more at ltu.edu. That's ltu.edu.
So looky who walked in the door of our brand new studio, but Devon O'Reilly, our man about town. Devin, good to see you, man.
Yeah, what a beautiful new location here at the Fisher.
Thank you. Have we let that out of the bag yet? I
guess we have.
I guess now we have. That's okay. We're in the Fisher building.
It was so amazing walking up here. It's really cool to be here. So it's a great new space.
Thank you. One of Detroit's iconic pieces of architecture, buildings, beautiful. I mean, every day I walk in here, I'm just amazed. It's a privilege to work in here, for sure. So, Devin, you've been like all around the world, man. Like, I mean, much less Detroit. Literally, you were in Greece recently.
Greece, right? The Netherlands.
For a while.
Yeah, we did some island hopping, Santorini, Paros, Mykonos. Each of those islands has a different flair. But you know what? A lot of the bars and restaurants tend to be pretty homogenous there. A cafe bar is a cafe bar. So, good to be back in Detroit where we have such a unique offering of places.
Yeah, but I bet, was the food good there in Greece?
The food was very good. The seafood was amazing. The Greek food was, bar none. I mean, maybe one of the great Greek restaurants here could replicate it, but it's hard to do it when you're right there on the island.
Well, we've got Greektown as a topic coming up later, so we'll get to that. But as we like to do with you, we like to get you to weigh in on some of the bar restaurant openings and closings around town, and you have helpfully provided us with a list. There's a bunch of new places opening, led by Carl's, the new diner concept from Kate Williams from Lady of the House.
Yeah, so I hit the ground running back from Europe, and there's a great new batch of bars and restaurants opening, and so Carl's was, I guess, the first kind of the new season. So as you mentioned, Kate Williams, Lady of the House, you knew it was going to be good. Obviously, I mean, I love Lady of the House. She's amazing.
Yeah.
And so Carl's does not disappoint, especially for someone like myself, and I think like you, who really appreciates the retro flair. You would have thought it's on the second floor, so second floor of the Siren. You would have thought you walked
Siren
into
Hotel, yeah.
Yep. You would have thought you walked into a diner in 1963. It's amazing, right down to the furniture, the vibe. It's got the placemats with like the crossword puzzles and the connect the dots and the trivia games and stuff that you can do with the little pencils. It's got a whole diner counter, and it also has a full bar. So it can kind of satisfy your breakfast needs, and it can satisfy your late night cocktails and food needs.
It makes me think of another Carl's that was back in the day. What was it? The Carl's Chop House?
Carl's Chop House.
Chop House.
On Grand River.
Yeah.
Right across the street from the Motor City Casino.
I wonder how many of our listeners remember that one.
I don't know, super old school steakhouse, nothing fancy or modern about it. But yeah, that closed about, I don't know, probably 10 years ago or something. For sure. Demolished, I believe.
So Carl's is definitely a new classic. They've got all sorts of great offerings. You can get breakfast there. They have omelets, pastries of the day. They've got, the ham sandwich there. They essentially use the same ham from Lady of the House. So if you've been to Lady of the House, that ham is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Club sandwiches, all sorts of stuff. I went for breakfast and got coffee, quiche, pastry of the day, and then I went for lunch and got the ham sandwich, and we had a little cocktail, and it was great. So
and they've got booze.
They've got booze, full bar. They've got a cocktail menu. So it's open every day, 10 a.m. to, I believe, 2 a.m. So it's kind of an all-day diner concept.
And you've been there multiple times now already.
Already multiple times.
So you're a fan.
A big fan, yeah.
Not super cheap, though. I mean,
but for Detroit prices, not too bad at all. I don't think it's not any more expensive than if I would have gotten lunch at any one of the other many restaurants in the downtown area. So I think it's kind of
like in line with like Dime Store or
Sure.
Central Kitchen.
Yeah,
something
exactly.
Like
It's right around that area, and the drinks are actually even a dollar or two cheaper on average.
that sounds good. All right, another new one that sounds super interesting. Just opened like a week or two ago. I know our Randy Walker went down there on I think their opening night. Smith and Company.
Yes.
Down on Selden in Midtown.
Yeah, Smith & Co. is awesome. It's in an old welding shop. It's kind of part of a greater development that's going to be taking place right in that area,
Including a brewery to come
Nain Rouge Brewing. So right now, Smith & Co. offers 4 Nain Rouge beers currently, and then the brewery is going to actually open up across the little alleyway there. So they'll have a brewery. They're going to have a barcade there. It's a really cool space. I have to say, if you haven't walked over there, if you're at Selden and you kind of just make that right around the corner, there's this area that I hadn't really noticed before that had been just developing in the last few months to a year. So
another alley. I heard you say
a little. It's got an outdoor area, tables, chairs,
Very
really cool hangout spot. But Smith & Co. is definitely the gem of that development. It's a huge space. So what I like about it is where I think we get into not being able to get into a restaurant on a Friday or Saturday night because, limited space. A lot of these places are very small.
Yeah, good luck getting into Selden Standard around the corner.
For sure. This Smith & Co. has a ton of space, a ton of different kind of table configurations. The bar is huge, got TVs. It's a super cozy atmosphere. I like it a lot. I think, again, as a resident over there, I think it's going to be a really nice addition to the neighborhood.
And food, what's the food like?
So the food is kind of, I guess you would say, kind of elevated American cuisine, comfort food. We got everything. I kind of tried a bunch of things when I was there. We got some, they have fry bread, which is really interesting. I highly recommend the fry bread. Essentially, it's an elephant ear without the cinnamon and sugar, but then they serve it with beer cheese and sausage links, corridor sausage links. It's so good. It's a great appetizer. We got some empanadas. We got their hero meat is really good. Their lamb is super tender. They have steak, fish, all sorts of good stuff. The food's great. They have a really interesting cocktail program where they have some bottled cocktails, pre-bottled cocktails. They have some cocktails on draft. So I got an old fashioned on draft. They have their own take on a Manhattan in a bottle form, the Detroit Manhattan with Faygo. It's in a bottle form. So they have a really interesting cocktail program too.
It's remarkable how that neighborhood is really, coming to life, because for so long Honest John's moved in there back in the early about mid 2000s, I think, and that was the only thing down there for the longest time. I mean, it was, if you walked a block over, it was, be careful, but so really remarkable to see it. I heard you say that the Barcade is still planned for that. Is that the chain that's called Barcade that has apparently a patent on that term?
Yes, it is. So I know that because that was something that was of a big hullabaloo for them and push.
Yeah.
That's what I heard, that they were coming, but I don't have specific details because it's one of those things that they had a hot announcement for that, and then something else that wasn't the chain, and then just
that was a couple
silence.
years ago, right?
A couple years ago.
I'd forgotten that was even planned. We've got Pop and Off World downtown. The Ready Player One, I think, is still open. But yeah, I haven't heard anything about the Barcade.
Yeah, I think it'll be the third in the development. So it's going to go Smith & Co. Then the Nain Rouge Brewing will open their full space.
Yeah.
But what's cool, their tap lines will go right into Smith & Co. So you get
that's nifty.
Fresh Nain Rouge beer, and then the Barcade will come in.
Sounds cool. All right, from Nain Rouge beer lines that go next door to Caviar Bumps. New place opening today. Is that what we said?
Grand opening today.
Yeah. As we record this. Savant.
I may have already been, though.
Oh, really? In the former Bolero, short-lived space called Bolero.
Interesting space. I think, it's a tough space, right?
Yeah, it's on Forest.
Yeah, it's right on Forest, just off of Woodward. Just, you're kind of blocked a little bit by that Shell station right there. I feel like there's been a couple things that have been in there in the last few years, and they haven't had much success. And I feel like part of it is a little bit of a tough location. You're next to the parking garage and in between a gas station.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird storefront location. You wouldn't expect a storefront to be there. But so you've been?
Yeah, I've been. I sniffed it out. This is what I do here. Wander around and see if the lights are on at these new bars.
Did you get a preview or something like that? Were you?
No, I just happened to wander in. They were doing a soft opening, so
cool.
I got a chance to sample some of the drinks, some of the food. Again, it's a really interesting menu. They're going for kind of a take on a French bistro type of stuff. You mentioned so there's foie gras eclairs. There's caviar bumps with a champagne back.
Foie gras eclairs.
Foie gras eclairs, which actually, if you think about
not sweet.
Right. So actually, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense in the sense of like, do you think the consistency of like what an eclair is? The foie gras could fit in there, and it's not too sweet. The caviar bumps with the champagne backs. It seems a little kitschy to me, but I didn't partake in those yet. Maybe
it sounds like a
grand opening.
scene from American Psycho. Like about like 80s Wall Street Raiders.
You don't have to do them off of your hand or your thumb. So
and then you go into the bathroom and do a real bump.
They give you a spoon.
So I did a little bit of looking in the in-between time here where you're talking about foie gras. I can't even say it, let alone foie gras. Anyway, just got in touch. The Barcade folks do not have a new update. The last post on their Facebook was from June 10th of the construction. And then there's another thing. Basically, they do not have an ETA and they are still working on an ETA. So that is the definition of a Detroit not sure when this is actually going to happen kind of thing.
Yeah, so odds now. Booking is now open on whether that will ever open. I guess
we'll see. I'm optimistic.
Yeah. But Savant, did you like the food? Was it good?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought the cocktails were really good. They call them molecular cocktails. I don't know if you guys have experienced this before.
Oh yeah. I'm not sure I'm a fan, but I get it. That's got a following.
It's like what would you call them? Like the boba balls, almost like they're little jelly,
like the bubble tea.
Yeah, like jelly
bubble,
type, but the bubbles burst and there's alcohol inside. So,
wow.
In the drink I had, it had some of these bubbles, and when you drank them, there was alcohol inside, and it was really interesting. So those are called molecular cocktails. So they're going to feation some molecular cocktails, which sounds very interesting.
I feel like I should play Tiny Bubbles behind all of this. That song, Tiny Bubbles.
So it all sounds. I hate to use the word fussy, but it sounds a little fussy.
We'll see. I mean, again, it's an interesting location. It's a tough space to go into, but if what you need to do is set yourself apart, right? So I feel like at least they're on the right track in the sense that they've set themselves apart in that they're that place. They've got the caviar bumps, they've got the molecular cocktails, they're the French bistro, they have like the fresh press to do croque madames and monsieurs.
This feels very Instagram worthy, and I feel like that's really important in today's age.
Yeah,
and if they're a French bistro, presumably they serve like standard steak and frites.
They have a steak and frites, yes.
That will certainly go over well in a town like Detroit.
Right. It seems like there's not a lot on the menu, but the stuff they do, it appears at least they do well. I'll be back a few times probably in the next week or so I can sample everything. But, certainly I think there's an opportunity there to kind of carve out a space for themselves and say, this is what we do. Come see us over here, because like we said, they don't get a lot of foot traffic in that area. So that would be my only concern.
Let's talk about a closing here. Circus Bar is now something different.
Closing or a metamorphosis, or should we say?
The circus has left town.
Right. We talked about this either the last podcast. Guys, it had to be only a few months ago.
Oh, I know. I mean, I remember that episode fondly because I feel like it was a very peaky trip into a weird corner. Like I'm not sure who thought it was a good idea to open up a circus themed bar. This just seems like a poor idea from the start.
Well, clearly they've already regretted their decision, because the Circus Bar is left town, and you can tell they are trying to eradicate all of the remnants of the Big Top Circus out of that space. And in its place, I actually was just walking past there yesterday evening. In its place, it's really just become a generic, this is a sports bar. There's Bud Light signs up about specials and cheap drinks. There's TVs that are on. I mean, that area, that corner would work perfectly for a sports bar.
So it's kind of like an amusement park where there isn't a name for it. It's just sports bar.
We have beer.
So they literally have no name right now?
They literally have no name right now.
It's just like, hey, going to the Tigers game? If you're one of the tens of people going to a Tigers game,
see the Bud Light signs in the window?
Yeah.
That means we have the drinks.
By the way, I'm going to my first Tigers game of the season tomorrow night.
Well, you should stop by there.
You should stop by. It'll be good. All I can think about is a redo of going to the Tigers game with the bar with no name.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be like an exercise in witnessing the apathy.
Maybe they should do a suggestion box of names, or maybe why don't we just go over there and put a new name on it and see if they just keep it.
Yeah.
Coolest sports bar name that I can remember. It's a place in Wyandotte. If you guys ever went down there a few years ago, Lions, Tigers, and Beers.
Ooh,
I love that one.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Another closing of note. IHOP, International House of Pancakes, otherwise known as. Now, normally I wouldn't pay this much attention. I don't personally care about fluffy, sweet pancakes. They do nothing.
You make your
for
Swedish
me.
pancakes, which are very good, but they're very different.
Very different. I'm a pancake snob. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I just don't care about those big, dense,
Gotcha.
fluffy
I'm
pancakes
with
with
you.
corn syrup on them and sugary fruit topping.
But people love IHOP.
People love it.
People
but this,
love IHOP.
Right. This was a big deal for a long time in Detroit, right?
It took a long time to get this one open. In fact,
And
the owners
talking
almost
we're talking about the IHOP, not
IHOPPLEBEE's.
not
Not
IHOPPLEBEE's, across from the Rent Center. We're talking about further down Jefferson on the east side.
Yeah, that in the old, I think it was Larry's. I can't remember the exact name of the place that was replaced at a long-standing house restaurant that was demolished from an old house from back in the day. And this was opened with a lot of fanfare because the owners, which are the husband of Anita Baker, almost sued IHOP to get the rights for a franchise in the city. And it turns out, for the most part, he was right to open one because for a while, that was the place to be. And in fact, the movers and shakers of Detroit all would go to IHOP, like Detroit in the 90s. That's where you ran into people.
How
Now,
times have changed.
How times have changed. A little pro tip, if you do want to have a diner and see somebody of power around Detroit, the Click restaurant.
Click Restaurant.
Is
for sure.
where that all is at
Yeah,
the
I
end of
love
that motel, which is just,
I love the Click.
oh, it's great.
I've been there in a long time, but I do love that
We're
place.
going to have to do a team trip to the Click for sure. But
So what happened to IHOP? I actually didn't see this. Lack of business?
yeah, they went out of business unceremoniously. There was a notice post to their door and they're done. And that was something that's kind of an end of an era for dining
sure.
in Detroit. And if you think about it, it really is an end of an era because you had the Big Boy, that kind of family style restaurant. And then you got that IHOP that was family style. So I think that family style restaurant is just not a thing in the city as much anymore. And then even Big Boy itself is actually going through a rebrand and a reimagination of their menu and a whole new look with a place out in Southfield. So that whole concept is kind of like gone away.
Well, and we're, in its place, you're seeing much more slightly upscale reinterpretations of the family diner, Rose's Fine Foods down on the east side. We just talked about Carl's, Parks and Rec too, right?
Right.
As
But they
part of
also
Republic.
appeal to different crowds. So
Right.
like one of the things I remember hearing about Rose's, which made me giggle, although I enjoy Rose's, I heard someone say, I just don't want twigs in my breakfast. Right. Like that was something that I heard because it's a different type of food. It's a different approach. And to be honest, they kind of bring in different crowds.
Yeah. So the end of an era for that, and another place that closed recently that we wanted to touch on. We mentioned Greektown earlier. Friend and associate, right?
Yeah.
Those are both singular terms.
Friend and associate.
In the old Santorini spot.
We hardly knew you.
In Greektown.
We hardly knew you. Actually, Friend and Associate opened up literally right before my trip to Greece in August. It had literally just opened, and I was in Greektown trying to kind of get a feel for what I was going to experience. And and we walked in, and it was a kind of a cool spot. So up above it is Del Mar, which is kind of a nightclub.
Yeah, rooftop bar.
Yeah, so like you said, it's the old Santorini space, and it looked like they were kind of just soft opening, and it looked really cool. They had done a lot to the space.
And that's a big dining room space.
Yeah, and I couldn't exactly tell what they were kind of going for. It almost looked like an office. I think
Sounds like a law firm.
Yeah, it did. It had that vibe, for better or worse. It had kind of the
I
law
think for
firm
worse because they're not there anymore.
It had that kind of law firm office vibe to it. I stopped in, thought maybe, this is a new space. Seems pretty cool. They've got the club up top on the second floor, and I hear that it's already gone. So au revoir.
We hardly knew ye.
I think they moved some of that stuff upstairs to the bar and kind of consolidated that a little bit.
Could be. It was a big space.
And that is, I remember going to Santorini just before it closed for a press event and it was a big space, and it was something where I thought to myself, you've got to have a lot going on to fill this as a restaurant. And it's got to be pretty strong to be in that district because, and I'd love to talk about this for a little bit. I know I'm working on a more in-depth piece about Greektown, but I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on the neighborhood because there is that ambitious plan to kind of reinvent the space, because Greektown has not kept pace with the rest of greater downtown Detroit as far as like the restaurant scene.
It's really fallen behind, and it was the entertainment district. I think we've talked about this before in a previous podcast. You know, when I was younger, when we were younger, when you were saying, "Oh, we're going downtown on a weekend," you meant you're going to Greektown in Detroit, because that's where the bars were. Like, that's where the bars for the people from the suburbs to go to were.
Like, I remember the music menu back in the day and places like that.
And even after that, and then, you know, when in the Shillelagh heyday and the, you know, places like that. So that it was the entertainment district. And now with all these other places opening up, it's just sucked away so much of that traffic that people really don't think to go to Greektown much anymore. And it's kind of gotten a seedy reputation.
Partly, you know, well earned. There's been a number of shootings and fights and things there. They've also made some really, I think, bad blunders in terms of just kind of like from an urban planning perspective. I mean, you know, when they knocked down Hella's, right, on the end of the block there, which was, you know, a fantastic restaurant. I have great memories of eating there and some great meals and stuff. And they turned it into a surface parking lot. And they knocked down, more recently, the Lycon Cafe, another one of my old favorite Greek restaurants. I think the owner retired. They knocked that building down and put a pedestrian tubeway that, you know, so people who park in the garage can walk straight into the casino and bypass all those businesses.
And then, you know, R.I.P. Plaka, which was kind of like a mainstay.
I love that place too.
And what happened was, I feel like, this is just my opinion, but I feel like they lost the magic of the place by
they lost the Greekness.
Right. That's the biggest thing, is Greektown is kind of in an identity crisis point, and there are
Five Guys.
Right. Exactly. So
Wahlburgers.
Is Greektown going to be just the lights and the entertainment district of Detroit, or is it going to, you know, kind of reclaim some of those Greek roots? And I know there's some individuals, some long-standing families that are still there. You know, there's some strong, proud Greek families that are still there who want to kind of bring back that Greek culture to Greektown. Well,
but then the other question is how much Greek do people really want, and how far do you go with that? I think that's a question for real debate.
Well, I mean, they've established over time that, I mean, there's a sizable Greek population here in the Detroit area, not so much in the city anymore, but in the region for sure. I mean, and Greek is definitely in our wheelhouse in terms of you know, the taste that people like Greek food. I mean, that's well established. I mean, Coney Islands, every Coney Island worth its salt has, you know, gyros and spinach pie and things like that on its menu. So we like that food. I think somebody that would do that kind of food well and, I don't know, somehow recreate that concept, I would hope would do well.
I've been working on reporting this project. One of the things I've learned is that there is really a debate as to how much demand there is for that kind of thing, what can work.
Yeah.
And I start to think, though, is everything in Detroit, and it goes to my like foundational thought about restaurants and entertainment in Detroit. You've got to be a destination. If you're not a destination, you're not going to draw people. And I feel like you got to have a hook. And I feel like Greek is the hook, whether you could include shops, you could include restaurants, you could really embrace that European feel. Some of the renderings I've seen where it's kind of like a mixed road with some car traffic, some cafe seating. Like, why don't you just
close off Monroe? I think they got to close off Monroe.
Well, I wonder if they can do that as long as, and this is another thing that ties into this, that is a main road that people use to get to I-375 right now. And that's part of that whole boulevard project.
Which we reported on recently is going to be going away as a freeway.
But that's 5 years from now.
Right.
And that's a long time when you're dealing with like the realities of business on the ground. To me, I feel like there's got to be a hook, and you could like lean in really hard and make it something where people will travel to it and have a story behind it. I think it could be really powerful.
It's just so crazy to me because I grew up in Ann Arbor, but when I would come to Detroit, you know, we almost always went to dinner in Greektown. You know, we always made that a thing because back then that was one of the only things to do in downtown
That's
Detroit.
what going downtown for dinner meant.
Right. I mean, it was like a thriving entertainment district, a couple blocks of, you know, bright lights and open businesses in a sea of just, you know, like abandonment. And
yeah, it's, I mean, in a lot of ways, Greektown has been a casualty of the success of Detroit.
And now that the rest of downtown is coming up, Greektown has gone down, and it's crazy. So we hope for better things. It will one day rise from the ashes.
Absolutely,
right?
It will embrace the motto, and I still think there's some really proud Greek families who are committed to keeping the Greek and bringing the Greek back to Greektown. So I hope they can do it.
Yeah. All right, Jer, Southwest Detroit Restaurant Week is coming up. Did we get the dates on that?
Yes, we did, Sven. It's Friday, October 4th through Sunday, October 13th. And I want to give people a little bit of a preview that we're actually having the folks from Southwest Detroit Restaurant Week here in the Fisher Building studio.
Fantastic.
Which is going to be really exciting. They're going to bring some food. There's going to be 24 restaurants, which is exciting. And one of the things I like about Southwest Detroit Restaurant Week is that it's like kind of like that very much like authentic. It's going to be from a variety of like Latin American countries.
Yeah.
So it's not just going to be Mexican. I'm hoping to see some pupusas. I'm hoping to see a variety of things.
Oh, you'll see plenty of those. I am sure. Pupusas, tamales, empanadas.
Just put a bib on me and roll me down Werner Avenue.
I'd like to see that. Devon O'Reilly is our man about town. Devin, always good to talk to you, man, and thanks for making me hungry.
Always good to be here. Can't wait to see you guys again with some new bars and restaurants.
We'll look forward to it.
All right, that'll do it for today's show. Thanks to all of our new listeners who have joined us the last couple of weeks. I hope you put your feet up and stay a while. And if you like what we're doing, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It's very much appreciated. For Sven Gustafson, Devon O'Reilly, and Cheyenne Noserini, who edited this episode, I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.